Welcome everyone to episode 12 of Inside the Teacher Studio. Today, my very special guest is my principal, Dr. Geathers. And so let's go ahead and get started. Oh, before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, share, comment, all of that. So let's, Dr. Geathers, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, well, first of all, please don't call me Dr. Geathers. My name is Carin Geathers. I always introduce myself as proud principal, Burkhart Elementary School, proud daughter of Claudia Geathers. I am originally from Hartford, Connecticut. Moved out to California to go to school and never left, and loved it so much I brought out my whole entire family. So I have one daughter, Nia, that I am very proud of, and she is a recent college graduate and lives in Washington, D.C.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on. Inside the Teacher Studio is really a celebration of educators and their artistry and creativity. A lot of times, yes, that does show up in beautiful displays of student work and lovely materials for their students. And sometimes it's really about, we sometimes operate in a system, not sometimes, we often operate in a system that isn't necessarily, it isn't meant for students that look like us, right? And so one thing that when Ms. Mitchell and I were talking, she happened to be my first guest from Burkhart. She said, you know what, you have to have Dr. Geathers on because talk about creativity and innovation, because there's a lot of times that you have to get creative with your budget, with how you phrase things, with how we do things. So I knew I absolutely had to have you on as the next guest. And Ms. Mitchell was absolutely right in saying she needs to be next. So, when my very first question is, when did you fall in love with education?
Oh my gosh, about probably 4 years old. I went to preschool. Cried because I saw my older brother and older sister going, and really loved it since then. I really did. I had wonderful teachers. I mean, just, when I think about it now, it is the thing that really kind of motivates and inspires me. But yeah, I've always loved school. Like I said, I grew up in Hartford, Connecticut. In the winter, I would just trudge to school. I mean, I just hated. We did summer school every summer. I hated I guess probably 4 or 5 weeks when we didn't have anything to do, but I always loved it. But I came from a family of folks who loved to read and loved to learn. And so, and I was the youngest of 3. And so I just, it was going to be natural anyway. However, I did not envision myself becoming a teacher or being in education at all.
Interesting. We'll talk a little about that in a moment, but you said that you went to school at 4, you had an older brother and a sister, and you saw them going off to school. Tell me a little bit about your experience as a young learner.
I think about it now, and I tell anyone who, basically asks me, my experience was very unique. When I finally did go to quote formal school, I went to school as a kindergartner, but I was in a class with kindergarten, first and second graders. One teacher, Miss Eileen, she had an aide, Miss McGinnis, still remember them. And we stayed in that same class from kinder to second grade. I was even though I cried to leave, I was so looking forward to go to the big school, is what we called it, which was literally the school across the street, where my cousins and brother and sister went. And I finally got there as a 3rd grader, only to be there for less than probably a couple of months because the city of Hartford Public Schools, had just started a gifted and talented program. I found out later as a teacher that Connecticut actually was in the forefront of the gifted and talented programs. They had started some things at Yale and things like that. So got, basically chosen to participate in a they called it then the TAG class, talented and gifted class, which had third, fourth, fifth, and sixth graders in it. So I went from one multi-age classroom to another multi-age classroom. So actually, my whole experience in elementary school, I had three teachers if we count Miss McGinnis.
Wow. So you are used to what we see at Burkhalter, which is some multi-grade, multi-level, multi-age students in one room. What did that look like when you were in there with 3 different grades?
Oh, as a little one, I just felt this idea of nurture. I knew who I was going to see every day. In terms of the adults, the students, of course, the second graders would leave, but we would be there. And it just, in terms of just, as a kid who was from, pretty rough kind of projects and things like that, all the way through actually high school. So to have a place where folks knew you, it was neighborhood. We walked to school, walked back home. Both of my teachers lived in a neighborhood. It was fabulous. It really was. I remember as a kinder or first or second grader, probably all 3, going to school and just knowing routines. We had, you came in the wintertime, you took your shoes off, you put them under the little heater. They actually stayed off all day. We walked around in our socks.
Wow.
We had clean up music, because we had to keep our room clean and all that kind of stuff. When I got to 3rd grade and it was Miss Cody. No, it was Miss Gant, and then she got married, and it was Miss Cody. She invited us all to her wedding.
Wow.
And I just remember crying. Now, Miss Cody had children, which we had met. But this notion of her getting married just did something to me. So I just remember crying, and my mother was like, "What are you crying?" And I just was like, everything's going to change. My teacher's going to leave me and stuff. But she didn't. What she did really was, she just gave us this whole, she was kind of, she was strict, but not mean. She had expectations. She told us we would. I don't ever remember her saying anything like, we couldn't do anything, like you will do this. Saturday school was a regular,
Really?
It was a regular, even in the winter time. It was just empowering. It was my sister and brother had one of each of them before the program started, and so they kind of knew. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience. Like I said, just really knowing what to expect, which seems kind of boring, but for me, with the background that I had, it just it allowed me to really settle in, to really focus on learning. Focus on just excellence, this idea of excellence and stuff, because these teachers would accept nothing less.
Got it. So it was not a choice, it was an expectation that you rose to. Got it. So you mentioned a couple of your you mentioned your teachers from elementary school. My next question just asks, who's your favorite teacher ever and why?
I remember each one of my teachers, probably through high school. I will say this, all of my teachers through high school, except when I got to my junior and senior year, were all Black.
In Connecticut, even. That's
Who
that's
knew?
You my ignorance.
That's right. Who knew? Who knew? I used to have to explain that when I got to, yes, there are Black people in Connecticut. That being said, I couldn't probably choose a favorite. They all kind of gave me a little bit of something, but what they had in common was, like I said, this whole notion of expectation. you know, you know, you have to do well, not just for yourselves, but for your family and for your community. And, you know, I think, you know, I look at the group of us, and some of us have stayed friends over the years. And I just say, gosh, they made so much out of us. You know, we were a bunch that really kind of exceeded expectations. If you looked at what maybe could have happened and what kind of happened with us. And you know, I think the program, the K2 program, probably lasted a little longer than the 3-5 program, because it was, you know, pretty much an experiment, and they were, you know, trying to figure it out. I don't remember maybe even as I got through middle school that they still were continuing that. So it was a moment in time, but I just think about, yeah, those teachers, each of them just kind of, you know, I carry a piece of them now. I certainly did carry a lot of them when I was teaching in the classroom. They were not administrators per se, but I think what it was and how they related to children is probably what I carry most when I'm talking to, you know, my own students at the school.
Right. I see that every day. So you're saying that it was public school, and that this was an experimental program of doing the cohorts, right? Who, if you know, like, whose decision was that to do this experiment? You have no idea. You're not sure.
I think, like I said, so much of, you know, we were lucky because we were in a state with Yale. Yale still has this whole you know, teacher education program where they still are kind of innovating and things like that. So I just think it was probably our time in the inner city to kind of get some innovation, to try out some things. I know that they still are doing. I mean, it's probably less, you know, kind of a big deal now than it was then. I remember the hullabaloo was that they first wanted to bus us out to some of the public schools that were in the suburbs. And my mom and a group of other parents were like, no, they're not going to do that. And, you know, when I think about it now, my mom and I have had, you know, chance to talk about it. She was very concerned, having herself been an adult during, you know, the tumultuous 60s and 70s and stuff. We're not busing anywhere. You know, you're going to stay in your neighborhood. And if this program, you know, really wants, you know, inner city students and stuff, they'll have to bring it in. And I think that's how it all came together.
Got it. So, so since you were, and you said your teachers were, lived in the neighborhood, does that mean that you saw in the faces of your teachers, you saw yourself reflected back, meaning there's representation of you at the front of the class?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Almost all of us were African-American children, though we did, you know, I did grow up in a very multicultural, multi-ethnic city, you know, Hartford's very much so. And it wasn't really until we got into like middle school and high school that I began to see, you know, students who were from the island of Puerto Rico and Dominican and you know, the Caribbean and things like that. But like I said, we went to neighborhood schools, and in our neighborhood, you know, those were the folks who lived there. My teacher, Miss Cody, went to my church. She was in the choir. I remember, you know, I would get in trouble constantly, and I tell the students that now, and they don't believe me, but it's true. I got in trouble a lot, but I love school. And so I think my teachers tolerated that, because, you know, I was a pretty good student. And, but I remember her sitting in the, you know, up on the stage in church in the choir section. And I just felt, even though she probably was not Monica, but I used to think she was just looking at me, and I would go through my head thinking, oh my God, what did I do this week? Because she's going to catch me. Because my mom would always wait to talk with her, hi, how are you doing? And I was like, oh God, oh gosh, wait, let me go back. I did my homework. Okay, wait. Did I do anything bad? Did I say anything bad? It was just really funny. But, not just seeing myself reflected, but I mean, I saw them. They were part of our community. And what a gift, I think, now to have those. I remember my middle school teacher, Miss Vasquez. She was the teacher that paddled me because, like I said, I was I was bad. I did my homework, but I got into some stuff. And she lived in a neighborhood. She could go to her, walk by her house on the weekends and things like that. So just like I said, just knowing that, though, actually was, it put boundaries on us. It really let us know that, as a kid, you're thinking, gosh, they're just watching everything that we do. But as I think about it now, as an adult, they watched out for us and ensured that we actually were able to navigate and stay safe, stay kids for as long as we were, and just get on through and, make it to where we wanted to be. So, yeah.
Wow, I'm laughing at the image of you getting into stuff. Especially since now when the kids go to your office, it's like, you will do this. That's hilarious.
Indeed.
So you talked about how you didn't grow up wanting to be a teacher. What did you want to be when you grew up as a young?
What does every Black kid who, somebody tells them they're really smart want to be? I want to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be rich. We're going to get leave here and so on. And actually all the way until I got into my second year of college, I just pursued it. Because like I said, I'm pretty good at the sciences and things like that. But I wasn't, it didn't, I was good at it, but it wasn't, it was I wasn't inspired. I didn't, enjoy it, if you will. And so I ended up I got a full scholarship to Mills College. That's how I came out to the West Coast, and loved the campus and everything. Beautiful campus, small enough that you have the opportunity to be in relationship with some of your professors and stuff. And one of my professors just kind of noticed, he said, you're really good at this, but, is this what you really want to do? And I was like, well, I don't know, but I'm a pre-med major. And he said, okay. He said, well, pre-med means actually that you can do a little bit of, it's not all sciences, in other words. Why don't you take a sociology class or a psych class or something like that? And I ended up, making friends on the campus with a young lady who was actually returning back to school. So she was non-traditional age, and we just got to be really good friends. But she fell sick, I remember, and stayed sick off and on for a little bit. And wanted me really to go to her class, her psych class. She said, could you go to my psych class maybe? And, get the notes and things like that. And I was like, well, how would I do that? Is the teacher going to give me the notes? And she said, well, you could hang out for a little bit, maybe, just sit in the classroom. And if they ask, just tell them that you're there to get my notes and things like that. And so I said, okay, literally, I sat in the class for one class meeting. And it was pretty early on in the semester, and I absolutely loved it.
Wow. So did you become a psych major?
I became a psych major.
Wow.
And it was just really interesting. And so she and I talked about it later, and I was like, so what are you getting your degree in? And she was already a junior, she had done years ahead of me. And she said, I think I'm going to, be a psych major. It's like, well, what can you do with that? She said, I don't know, but I just really like it. And I said, I do too. I wonder if, and really that was it. I mean, I just loved it. I was like, oh my God, you can get a major in this stuff. This is this is the easiest thing ever. Psych, sociology, and then of course the hard sciences and things like that. And I figured, hey, my mom told me get in and out in 4 years because you only have a 4-year scholarship. So put it all together. And I did. And I never regret it, because it is something, though I have not, pursued anything in a formal sense in psychology, something that I use all the time.
Got it. Yeah. So did you ever in your undergrad figure out what you were going to do with that psych major?
Never.
No, it was just this is great. I get to study this and get in and out in 4 years. Got
Get
it.
in and out in 4 years. I went back and forth to Connecticut. I came here. I would go back, and and finally, my mom and my cousin, older cousin, who always knew she wanted to be an attorney and a judge, like always knew, just the opposite of me, sat down, and I think I probably did that maybe a year and a half. Every break, I would go home. So spring break, and I'd go home after college and things like that. Because when I got out of college, I started first just kind of doing some private tutoring and things like that. I did not start subbing or anything like that, because like I said, I didn't even see that. I just was like, I'll make enough money to be able to go home, and and then I'll stay for a few months and things. Well, anyway, one of those times I got home, and my cousin said, what are you going to do? Like, because she was so driven and she knew what she wanted to do. And I was like, I don't know. She's like, no. You're becoming like those California peoples. You got to know what you need to do. And I just remember my mom being in the kitchen, and she had never really said anything about it. And I just, she turned around. She's like, yeah, what are you going to do? Love having you home, but are you going to be home? Because you keep, you're here and then you go back. And my cousin actually finally said, hey, why don't you go to get a teaching credential? And I was like, why? And she said, because you don't remember? And I was like, no, remember what? She said, oh my gosh, when we were younger, you would make us sit down and you want to play house. And I was like, what? Because I had no memory of that. And she was like, how do you not remember? And she said, well, you might not remember because we play for like 5 minutes and then we would just leave you, but you would set up the whole classroom and all of this stuff. Wow. And I was like, oh, but that started me, kind of thinking, well, I'm doing tutoring. I went back. By this time, I've met who I thought, was the love of my life. And he said, yeah, you could sub, you could be a substitute teacher. Why don't you try it? And I did that for about 1.5 years. I walked into the school right around the corner from where I was living. And the principal, I just told the principal, hey, I've gone all over the city, but if you just need me, I live right around the corner. You just need, even if you call me, at the last minute, if you need a sub. And literally they kept me working probably for about a whole half a year.
Wow. And
towards the end of that, she said, hey, you need to go and get a teacher credential. Have you ever thought about it? I said, well, I hadn't thought about it, but now I guess, I could probably go and get it. And that was the beginning of it.
Wow. So I love how you just answered my next question of what was your origin story to the profession. Where was that very first time? What school? Was it in Oakland?
It was in Oakland. It was Maxwell Park, which is no longer, which is very sad to me. So I started there and I started subbing. I had subbed all over the city before then. But I was East Coast girl. I wasn't driving yet. And so my boyfriend at the time would have to get up and just say, he was like, where are we going today? I'd say, oh, such and such a place. And he'd be like, oh my God, that's all the way in West Oakland, or that's all. Now, I didn't know where it was. And so he finally said, no, there are 3 schools that you can walk to. Walk to one of them and tell these people you live around the corner and you will. Right. And so, and basically that was it. So it was Maxwell Park. Once I got my teaching credential, I got hired at Burkhart Elementary School. It's no longer as well. And I did that for actually I spent I did kindergarten for a teacher who was out on maternity leave from the beginning of the school year until the winter break. And I was so sad I was leaving. That's when they had AM and PM kindergarten. And I was the PM the principal said, just watch the teacher in the morning and do exactly what she does. That's all you got to do. Real easy. It wasn't so easy, but she was a great model for me, right? And so, but when we got to the December, I was so sad. I had seen these kids just grow and grow and grow. And I just, oh my gosh. And, the teacher was just so nice to me when she came back. Oh my gosh, I wish you could stay. Maybe we could co-teach and stuff, but they were having none of that. And so I just remember packing my things up and I was so sad. And the principal said, hey, come in here. Let's talk about, and she said, hey, you know what? I got a that fifth grade class upstairs. You could do it. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. Tears were dried up. Oh my God. You mean those kids who are outside and loud and running around and in the buildings? I was like, no. She said, they won't do that. They won't be that way for you. They won't be, I will give you support and everything. Well, of course, she talked me into it. And so after winter break, I ended up going upstairs and literally finishing up that class. And, even that was kind of special because, I had a group of kids who I'd started with it as kinders and other group of kids that actually were, being promoted. And I think that was actually sixth grade and in 1 year. And so I saw those kids go. We bonded immediately. She was absolutely right. Never looked back to kindergarten because the principal had told me things like, I know you love the kinders, but when you tell the sixth graders to sit and do something, they actually can do it for longer than 5 minutes. I love it. It was all this stuff. And I couldn't appreciate it until literally I'm sitting in the class and I'm writing something on the board. And I look back over my shoulder and everybody's sitting down and everybody's doing what I've asked them. I was like, she got a point here. She got a point. So I literally started, and I was so excited. I'm going to go back to Parker. That summer we went to a conference and everything. And the principal calls me up probably a couple of weeks after and says that she would no longer be the principal at Parker. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't sure if she was going to be principaling and where. But I have a spot for you. My friend needs a upper grade teacher. I told her you might be interested in it. And I actually ended up interviewing at Grass Valley Elementary School.
Oh, okay.
13 years, best 13. I mean, I think about Maxwell Park was wonderful. They kind of, got me started. Parker, I loved because I got the kindergarten and the fifth grade experience all in 1 year. Grass Valley, though, really had a group of teachers and staff that just, I was 22, I think, and they just grew me up.
Wow.
And really gave me the love of teaching, being a professional, having colleagues. The principal lived 10 minutes away. 2 teachers live 10 minutes away. The parents we knew because they lived in the community. And I said, this is not possible that I could find a school very much like the schools that I went to 2,500 miles away. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. And now I am the teacher that I had as a teacher.
Wow.
And so it's been a special journey.
Nice. So you were in classroom about 13, 14 years. Mm-hmm. And what made you decide to go into administration?
Kicking and screaming. Someone sent me I guess I probably got an email or something, but someone started talking about this administrative credential and masters that you could get. Mm-hmm. And I was like, not interested. And then I just remember, whoever it was, and I can't even remember now, just kept saying, and finally, I think they said free. And I was like, well, what do you mean free? Like, does free really mean free? And they were like, yeah, it's free. They have a whole program called Principal Leadership Institute at Cal. And I said, like UC Berkeley? Yeah. I said, and free, like for real free? Yes, you can go and get it. It's 1.5 years. You don't have to stop working, right? and you can get it. And so I went to the information session. I pulled my very good friend at that time, Earl Walls, who was a fellow colleague who had already had a master's degree. He's like, I'm not going back to school. I don't want another master's degree. I was like, you can get an admin credential. I don't want an admin credential. But he and I both went. I said, well, let's just go to the information session. We went, and they were able to talk both of us into the program.
Wow.
And what
cohort were you in?
I was in cohort 5. I was right in the middle. At that time, because they had many more now, but at that time, and it was a 10-year grant, right? So and really, what the professors, when we went to the information session, said was they learned so much, and that 5, right, it's smack dab in the middle. You guys are going to be cohort 5, and you are going to set the tone for the next 5 years, and that kind of stuff. Now I just think I'm a sucker for all of that kind of stuff. So, because what did I care about setting the tone and that kind of stuff? But it was much like some of the things that I had heard and that motivated me when I was younger. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And the great part was that Earl also decided to do it. And so we both were working at the same school, and we could, go to class and get our credentials together. And but when I finished, I wasn't ready to leave the classroom. I still was in love with being in the classroom. And then things started changing, in terms of leadership at the superintendent level at, in Oakland. And I was like, maybe I should go out. And so I ended up doing coaching for about, 2 years. And then I'm walking through what we used to do as a cohort, much like we do now as a network of principals, is walk through schools and, do walkthroughs and have conversations and things like that. And I'm walking through Burkhalter. I was like, gosh, I never saw this school before. I've subbed in almost all of these schools, and I just had never been to Burkhalter. And most of the time we would go to a school maybe once a year because we're trying to get to so many of them. But Burkhalter we went to, I just remember 3 times. And the third time, the then network superintendent looked at me and she said, what do you think about Burkhalter? And I was like, and I get to talking and, and she said, no, what do you really think about Burkhalter? I was like, okay. Would you send your daughter? By this time I had my daughter. Would you send your daughter here? And I said, I might. It's a nice little school and everything. And I said, why do you keep asking me? She said, well, we've got some decisions to make at the district level. Burkhalter is slated to close. Wow. And I was like, wow, why? Because even without I had been there more than I had been at other schools, but I didn't really know, all of the ins and outs. And she said, it's a lot of stuff going on. They've been through consolidation, there's been a couple of things going on and it just hasn't landed well. And so because one school is down the corner, down the street, and another school is up the hill, we thought, if we had to close the school, we could close the school. But if you think that it might be worth, and so I was on a mission, they kind of sent me out for a couple of months to just kind of root in this school. And what I find out is that, no, teachers are teaching and students who are very much like me are learning. But you could feel the tension when you walked in amongst the adults. You could feel it. And I was like, okay. We get to probably spring, as I recall, and she says, I'm just going to ask you, if the principal were retiring, and she is, would you be interested in taking the school? Because I know you have your admin credential. It's like, I don't know. I'd never done it, this, that, the other. And, we would give you a level of support. I'm still not sure. I got to talk to my family. And finally, they said, well, the staff would like to meet you. Would you be interested in at least talking with the staff? And I said, yes. Now, our own Miss Allen, who is still volunteering, was the teacher at that time. she said, hey, would you be willing to come over to my house? We wouldn't even meet at the school. And I did.
Uh-huh.
The staff was there. They talked about what teachers still talk about, level of autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
They walk through our school all the time. Most of what we get is just negative, 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 but we know our students are learning.
Mm-hmm.
When our school closed, which I didn't realize the 4 years before, we were not welcomed at this school. And so that's why some of us have our doors closed.
Mm.
And we don't, so they just kind of gave me a lot of context and stuff. And I said, okay, if I were the principal, what would you want? Like, name your top 3 things. We don't want any more walkthroughs. I was like, yeah, I probably can't guarantee that one. But it was just, what teachers still want today. We want to be able to do our jobs. We might need some help in kind of becoming a unit of one, but we got to be able to, surface how we feel, why we feel that way, and so on. Okay, I might be able to. This is when that psychology, degree comes. I might be able to facilitate conversations and things like that. And basically, we want to be treated as professionals. I was like, I might be able. Oh no, and they said we want, a disciplinarian.
Really?
Said, yeah, that's what they wanted. Now, remember, I had been in the school. I had never really seen. I had been in some other schools in Oakland. Burkhart was not a school that I would say kids were, quote, out of control or anything like that. But I hadn't been there all day, every day for months on end. And so I said, okay, I might be able to do that. And that's kind of really how it started. But that was not my goal. I wanted to take the degree that I had gotten. My focus was, culturally responsive teaching and learning. And I wanted to take it back into the classroom. Teacher. When I think about it now, I suppose then I'm probably, or at least the goal these days, is to do a little bit with the students and, of course, inspire teachers to use some of those practices and stuff in their classrooms. But that was kind of how it happened. When I look back on it, a kid came into my office, I think before the winter break, and looked up at the, I always forget I have the interview in the newspaper when they came, because it was a big deal. The school is going to be closing. And the headline says, new principal seeks to not have the school close, or something crazy. And I just remember Katie coming out and interviewing me, and it was a big deal. My mother called me, all the folks at the church, because I didn't see the newspaper before they did. They saw the newspaper. Oh, and they're calling me, and I was like, Mom, what is wrong? What is wrong? And of course, it gets published after I've already started at Burkhart. And she said, oh my God, you're in the newspaper, And I was like, oh, I forgot about, because she had done it months before, know. And so I just, I think about that now, and I cannot believe that I'm in year 19, like it's gone by. And so this kid looks over in December and says, is that you? And I said, where? And I'm looking, because I've cleaned my office up and stuff. I just keep, and they were like, over there. And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, I forgot about that. Let's get your work done.
So wait, you're 19 years as principal there?
19 years.
Wow.
I know. I think about it all the time.
Wait, so what I find interesting is that there's so many similarities in our journey. I never wanted to be a teacher. I never thought about it, but I never wanted to actually do it. Fell into it because somebody else saw something that I didn't see. And really, truthfully, it was because I was a mother of a newborn and needed to grow up, right? So I came to education kicking and screaming, right? And then it's interesting because I've thought about PLI. I'm sick as a dog that it used to be free. But I don't want to do it because I'm afraid if I have that credential that somebody's going to talk me into being.
They're gonna tap you.
They're going to do it, and I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
You can do it. You can do it.
I'm like, the minute that I get that credential, I'm going to end up being a principal, and I don't want to do that. Like, I'm literally, I think, well, and this is something that I really want to get to talk to you about, but I'm going to pause that for a second. The part about the artistry in your craft, because I think there's a lot of things that I've seen you do just in the short year and some months that I've been there that I've never seen other principals do. And so I would like to talk to you about that. But and I know that you got your doctorate in elementary math ed, and math ed is clearly my passion and my joy. Even the fact that your partner at the time told you to go into the schools and just tell them that you're available and you're around the corner. Yes. I called you and was like, you know what, for this online thing, I'm going to just email you directly. And I just kept bothering you.
It worked.
So I just wanted to talk to you about maybe talk about who are your main influences in where you are today in education.
Like I said, the same professor who was at PLI came and was starting a cohort, of folks. And I was like, Linda, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you. The answer is no. You haven't even heard. The answer is no. And she said, just come to, that's what I did before. I went to the information session, and I don't have an Earl this time. And Nia is not a little girl anymore. She's in high school, and, I got to get her into college and all of this stuff. And I just don't have the time, like I don't have the time. And even with free, again, she said, well, here's the thing. We're doing what's called a micro credential. So just come and see. It's
famous last words.
Yeah. It's a half a year. We're going to start in the summer. You'll be finished by December. And I think it's something you'll be interested in, because I had said even then, though I didn't do my master's in that, that I was I said, if I had it to do over again, and I actually was thinking about teaching and becoming a teacher, right? I was thinking about it and fall into it. I probably would have gotten a single subject credential in mathematics. And, one of the few people who would talk about that. And, they were fascinated. Well, why? Math, what do you? I said, well, first of all, math was something that I could do watching TV, listening to the radio, halfway talking to my friend. I mean, I just loved it. And, hats off to my teachers who just, I saw the patterns. I could do the, all of the Fibonacci numbers and all that kind of stuff. I just loved it. And really, when I got into school, I noticed that kids didn't like math, right? It was almost heartbreaking, right? When I was teaching. And so my goal every year was to take the one or two kids who just said, oh my God, I had one student who literally would throw up if I called him to the front of the classroom to do a math problem. And so I just carried him around with me all the time. And the goal, my personal goal was, turn these kids on to math. I mean, they're going to get the reading, right? Ad nauseum. And maybe if they're lucky, we're going to get them some science and some history. But really, this thing is about reading and some math. And so that was the goal. And so when I got the chance to pursue a doctorate, I was like, yeah, at this time in my life, I'm kind of, leaning into what I would have done if I had been intentional about going into teaching. And just to see students as they start out in their elementary careers, really loving math, right? It's not even a like, they love math. And then to see that dim, like some kids, and then to get scores of kids, right? From these standardized tests that, oh my God, it would just break. It still does, just breaks my heart. We're getting closer. I'm seeing breakthroughs with teachers. And what I would say to you is how I marry the whole thing about having an admin credential and stuff is that now the teachers are your students, and you get to inspire them to inspire, the kids and stuff. So it's just as joyful to me to have teachers come and say, oh my gosh, and we're having this conversation about, and he just learned, I just, it's just like me being in the classroom and watching them develop their skill and their practice, their learnings. You coming along has just opened that up, right? Because now, they have language and they talk about it in ways that they didn't before. And so I'm just inspired, and like I said, now I think in my retirement, which I think about sometimes, not yet, but I think about it and say, gosh, I probably would, I would love to go now to middle school and students algebra, what I mean? Because I hear that is the gatekeeper, right? They gotta know how to do this algebra and stuff,
right.
And to be able to do that, I am inspired now by so many people that I research. Of course, Loretta Hammond, just not just about math specifically, but just about culturally responsive. I can't think of her name now, but it'll come to me. But there was like 2 or 3 folks that just really, when I researched them, and just thought, gosh, if I knew then what I know now, things would be different. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like I have so much now to kind of give to students that that is what I think about. That would be, I'd even probably volunteer to do like math clinics and things like that for students, because I do think it's that important.
Yes. On that we agree. My next question really has to do, it's kind of, it's a little selfish, but you mentioned retirement and I immediately said, no. And that's the word going around, that who knows when she's about to retire, this, that, and the other. You talked about how your family is like, when are you going to retire? And we've seen so many, this system that wasn't meant for all of us, right? Has gone through the same kind of cycles of, they just repackage it and call it something else. And they try to, add a little bit, a layer, but it all still is very much the same. So with all of that, with the folks that are telling you it's time to go, with the with all of the kind of craziness that we have to deal with, with what are they talking about, potentially taking over,
state receivership, and
with this crazy clown in
the White House,
what keeps you here?
Kids, first of all, never the same day twice. Never. In 19 years, I just have never had, it's and I tell people that, and so and they're, that's mostly a positive thing. Sometimes it can be very daunting, because I still feel like I haven't accomplished what I want, which is the majority of my students, right? We're just, I kind of feel, little cracks. We're making incremental progress. But what really, so that keeps me, coming in, also keeps me up at night. So Lord. But really what keeps me coming every day, really, and I still absolutely love my job. Absolutely love it, is the student, the parent, the staff person, the community members. Somebody will say something or do something that just, it makes me think. It inspires me. It, it gets into my brain, and I'll start to, it'll rumble around in there. I think about what I owe to those same teachers that we talked about earlier, to keep going. It is, when things are tough, otherwise, I can go to work and feel like this is not work. This is therapy for me. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the hug that I get that wasn't expected. You know, the parent who comes back and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm bringing my children here." And I was like, I said I wasn't going to be here when you got back with that one. And here I am. You know, it's something along those lines. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's all of those things, but
Yeah.
really this, you know, I gotta do better.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when folks, because I get asked that all the time, I am one of the, you know, I think about that now. 19 years has just flashed by in my head,
Right.
but I am now, quote, one of the OGs, and there's not many of us left.
Mm-hmm.
And talking with a young person who has changed jobs, I think probably 7 or 8 times,
Mm-hmm.
um, and wonders how I could stay in the same one as long as I have. You know, what I've said to him and others is that, well, somebody has to stay,
Mm.
right? Somebody got to stay.
Right.
As you kind of go on, and there's nothing wrong with that. You
Right.
should absolutely do that until you kind of find your purpose and your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's got to stay and mind and inspire others. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if I can get a teacher out of the bunch every 2 or 3 years, and they actually, you know, want to pursue it, and I've been very lucky, very blessed to have a couple of folks who have come through,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I've helped along the way, and they themselves have become teachers, or at least a part of the profession in some way. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, you know, pride,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and stability, because of all the stuff you just named, because of
Yeah.
all the foolishness and the nonsense and stuff. Somebody has to stay. We are responsible for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, but I do realize, you know, I want to have a life after. I do, you know, want to do things that I haven't been able to do, but I'm not ready to leave yet.
Right.
My mother assured me that when I am ready to leave, I will know it.
Mm.
Be very clear.
Wow.
She said, and if you're like me, or she used to say, and if you're like me, you're going to know it. You're going to let folks know, and they won't be able to turn you around, and you'll be okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, because I've seen some of my colleagues leave
Yeah.
for various reasons, and they weren't okay. And the good news is, in our profession, they can come back and they can be substitutes, or they can, you know, work with aspiring or newly minted teachers and principals and things like that. So I think there's always going to be a little niche and things, but I'm not there yet.
Got it. Got it. So, you know, you've been a principal, a leader of a school for 19 years, which, like you said, that doesn't really happen a lot, right? And I'm trying to figure out whether or not, you know, it's what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Mhm.
Like, is it the confidence that you've gained that makes you more willing to think out of the box? Or do you get away with things because you've been around and you've been a staple at Burkhalter for so many years? Because every time I tell somebody I teach at Burkhalter, they say, "Isn't that where Carin Geathers is?" I said, "Yes." And like, "She's great." And I was like, "I know." And we are all gonna cry if she ever talks
Thank you,
about
thank you,
me.
thank you.
So when I talk
Yeah.
about artistry, it's really about that kind of, like, again, sometimes we got to get creative with how we present things, how we couch things, just in terms of getting through all of the craziness, right? So I know that you've done this a lot, but I want to ask you, what jumps to the top of mind when I ask you to tell me about a time when you demonstrated artistry in your craft, specifically as a leader?
Yeah. I think I tell you what does come to mind when, like I said, when I started at Burkhalter, it was under the specter of closing, right? For a totally different reason than what they're talking about closing now.
Right.
The school had just received staff and students from a closing school the year before I got there. And since I've been there, that has happened 2 additional times, right?
Really?
Yeah.
What three schools?
Lakeview Elementary,
Right.
right? And then Parker.
Okay.
Okay. Lakeview was the big one. And so when
Mhm.
I think about what we did, the principal at the time, Clara Roberts, who was still, I mean, we were friends, but we got to be so much more than that, because we both were basically set to close. It was
Mm.
going to be either Burkhalter, it was going to be Lakeview, and I can't remember who the other schools were. And so we made a pact and said, if it is your school, I'm going to try to get my parents to go to your school.
Mm.
Because they had already told, the district had already said, okay, so if one of the school closes, you'll have, to a certain extent, your choice of where you want to go, right? Because we want to try to keep as many of the students and the families as we can. So
Right.
we'll try to move most of them to another site. We won't be able to get all of them and that kind of stuff. So we kind of knew it. And we just started thinking about possibilities, right? I know your staff, we had already started having our staffs meet. Now, we are not close. I mean, we're close enough because everybody drives, but I should have been probably partnering with Parker, right? A mile down the road, or partnering with Markham, or partnering with Grass Valley, my old school. But it was something about us sitting in principals' meetings and talking about the things that were going on at our schools, and saying, gosh, you're working on the same thing that I'm working on. You think maybe you and I could get together? That's really how it started. And then I said, well, maybe we could do our staffs maybe once, during the year, or twice during the year. Do you think maybe your staff could come to my, and they did. Now, she knew, Miss Roberts knew some of my teachers outside of, quote, teaching, outside of work. I knew some of hers. So we literally asked these teachers, what do you think about, even before we even thought about school was going to close, like a whole 2 years before. And because we were in different networks, and we laugh about it now, Monica, we were, quote, sneaking, because our network soups had partnered us with other schools. We were like, don't worry about it. We're going to do that, and we'll get together. Again, because we had a common goal. Our student populations were not the same, but we were working on the same things. And when we talk about it, and now, and she has retired since then, our values and things, right? What I talked about with my teachers, she talked about with her teachers. So, and then of course we literally are now linked together, because it was very clear to us, one of our schools is going to close. We got so busy in about a month, harnessing all of our personal relationships, our professional relationships, what we want to do. It was very, we both were really very scared, but also very inspired, because now we have a plan.
Right.
And we had started talking to our parents. Hey, don't worry, this is not going to be the end of the world, though it does feel that way. We're going to hold it. And I had already talked to my parents. They had kids and cousins and relatives at her school, and vice versa. And the coup de grace was, okay, transportation is going to be an issue. So whatever we say, and we're telling the parents behind the scenes, ask for transportation, because if you live here, you got to get to the school.
Right.
You know what I mean? Both ways. And we put together, my niece, who works now for a nonprofit, was working at Teachers College, and had come to visit, literally, Monica, for about, I don't know, a weekend or something. Of course, it was all over the news that Oakland was doing all this stuff, right? And so she had been calling me, and we had been talking and stuff. She flies in she hears Clara and I talking. And, you know, like I said, part of it was just heartache, but part of it was, and she said, why don't you guys just write a proposal? I'm like, what? She said, why don't you guys just write a proposal and tell the folks who are making the decision, whatever happens, here's what we want to do. And look, she's young. We look over our shoulder. They're not gonna that's what they do in, you know, for those in private, you know, they're not gonna let us do that. She said, why don't you guys just try it?
This is your niece?
This is my niece.
Love it.
Try it. Just see. And she literally helped us that weekend.
Nice.
This is what we're willing to do. We almost can guarantee we probably can get 75% of the staff, maybe as many of the parents and the children to go. Because like I said, the biggest fear was that they would lose these families.
Right.
They didn't want to lose the families. It was bad enough already.
Right.
And so when we got the word, I still remember Monica was at the movie theater because my nerves were so bad.
Yeah.
Because they told us, we're going to let you guys know this weekend.
Whew, yeah.
Whatever happens, you're going to get a phone call. I'm in the movie theater with my daughter because, like I said, it was just terrible. I see the number come up. Stay here. I'll be right back. And they said, well, you know, Miss Geathers, you know, the good news is that Burkhart is going to be the school that we keep open. But we are going to close Lakeview. And I said, okay. And so I, you know, take a deep breath, go back in the movie theater, wondering if Miss Roberts has gotten the same phone call.
Right.
Maybe a half hour later, her number pops up on my phone. Step back out, and she and I are crying. And now we have written a draft of this proposal.
Right.
And I said, you know what? We need to shoot this last shot.
Right.
And that was the innovation.
Wow.
They gave us, Monica, everything we asked for,
wow.
including transportation. We want transportation for our families. We want to be together for 3 years as co-principals at Burkhart. And we need transportation for our kids. And at that time, we had an after-school program that had a van and would shuttle kids around anyway. Wow. You know, and, you know, can we do a contract with him? He'll insure the kids who are coming from Lakeview area. He'll meet them in the morning. He'll get them back. They'll stay in after school program, which now we have pulled them over into that, and he'll bring them back and drop them back off. And it just, I mean, it was like magic. And I think about that again, a moment in time, right? I don't know if we could pull that off now, but we certainly did do it. We did 2 years. Clara's mom took ill, and that was the reason why we didn't do 3. But the 2 years that we co-principaled, like I said, was magical.
Wow.
And we started just this journey of, we're going to do all the stuff we kind of wanted to do. And we got most of the staff. So Miss Staples, Miss Balbuena, Miss Williams, all of those came to Burkhart as a result of Lakeview closing.
Okay. Wow.
And there's Mr. Panagas, and have stayed until they retired and stuff. So, you know, it just, we laugh about it now. My niece is visiting me. In fact, she'll be flying in on Friday. And I was like, I just think about, there are no coincidences, right? That just kind of came together. But, and that's probably one that comes to mind. There have been littler ones that have had as much of an effect as that, but that was probably the one that was just, I mean, it was tumultuous and fabulous at the same time.
I love that your niece is the one who basically was like, quiet mouths don't get fed. And you guys were proactive. You asked for what you wanted and you got it. Right. And so I look along those lines. Telling somebody the other day, because, you know, my passion for math ed is just like crazy. I mean, it's not my my actual role, but it is part of what I do. And I was like, you know what, if this thing ever goes away, I'm like, I want somebody to be willing to do what your schools in Connecticut did, and think out of the box and experiment. We need some math specialists at the elementary level. I would straight teach the kindergartners, and then the next year I follow them to first grade, and then second grade, and third grade, just to see how, because I'm one of those people that first break all the rules and I ask for permission
later.
So I too would operate under all of these requests from the district and do what I'm going to do because I know it's going to work, right? And so just thought I'd throw that out there just in case.
I heard you. You threw it, I caught it. That's right. As my good friend Elaine would say, you're spelling, I'm reading. I do think though, Monica, I think because of all the challenges and things, right? I'm a glass half full kind of person, and I realize that. And so what I've been thinking about lately, and this is a news flash, I haven't really actually said it out loud to a lot of people, is to take what potentially might be seen as something that is dire and to turn it into possibility.
Right.
So I've been thinking about, goodness gracious, it would be great to have a cohort of students and teachers and to actually do that now, right? It would be great to lean into this kind of natural affinity that some staff have that love. Some people are great teachers, period. Doesn't matter what the curriculum is, right? There are others of us that, yes, we can teach all of the things, but really our passion, and more than that, we are able to do a really good job in the teaching of writing, reading, mathematics. So I've been thinking a lot about that. I really have. I am inspired by, again, my niece, who is working in schools all over the country and even outside of the country. And she comes back with these stories. And what she really, and they are uniquely different and the same. And what we've been talking about lately is, what is it about, what makes this quote hard? Like, why can't we at Burkhalter, a group of very committed, staff, very experienced, very capable, right? So there is none there, no negatives. Parents, students, like everybody. Why is this thing so darn hard? Like, what is it? And what she says simply is, the system was not designed to produce the kinds of, to have the kinds of results that you guys are trying to get. So it is not simply that you guys are doing something wrong, you're not doing it the right way. It certainly isn't about the kids or the families or where they come from or this. She said it is not about that. And because I live outside of that, I see, quote, the system. You guys are inside.
Right.
I see the system. I see how, this thing is just so, it's designed to give the results. That being said, she, basically our last conversation was, I want to inspire you guys to really vision. When was the last time that you did visioning work? So funny, because Monica, we're doing our site plans, right? And she said to everyone, except she said, now this maybe should be taken to heart by even the folks who have, because there's been a few schools in our network that have done redesign in the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years. She says, I literally want all of you to go back to your visions, and I want you to revision. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, where's that coming from?
Right.
For her. And So I tell my niece, and she says, yeah, you now have permission to do exactly what
I
it
love,
is.
I love it.
And so my thing is, yeah, how is it that me and maybe you too come out of we grew up the way that we grew up, and we end up where we are? Like, how did that happen?
Right.
Because I am almost certain, if not the same conditions, maybe worse conditions, but we managed to make it. Like, what happened? And when I think about it, I think about, yeah, I was nurtured. Okay, well, we got that, pretty much in place. I, knew the people. We are very stable staff for the most part, right? And then I get to things like, okay, I had the same teachers time after time. What did that give me? What kind of confidence did that give me as a kinder, first, and second grade, second grader? I had the same teacher again. Now, could I recreate that? Probably not, but there's something about that, right? I don't necessarily remember the curriculum, so I think it's but I do remember the routines. Remember some of the protocols. We knew what to do, when to do it. So there's something about that we probably can tap into, So it's all of those kinds of things that am actually thinking about, really just, I'm starting to journal again. I haven't journaled in a long time, but I'm starting to journal again, and I'm starting to kind of capture some of these things that, like I said, I might be driving in my car and I don't pull over on the side of the road, but as soon as I get a chance, I do start taking notes and things like that. And now, look, because now I have another person, or some people to kind of rub, bounce ideas off and things like that I'm getting excited again, even with the specter of receivership and maybe this whole thing with the Department of Ed and stuff. And so, but I don't know. It's more than just a fleeting ideas and stuff. It's stuff that I'm now trying to capture, because I think the potential for us to kind of revision, if you will, and put maybe a few things into place, might get us closer to where we want to be in terms of what we want to do for these kids and families.
I love that. When you were telling me the story of how you grew up and you had these cohorts, K through 2 and the 3 through 5, I didn't say it at the time, but I actually got to follow some kids 3, 4, 5 in my early years of teaching. And, the first year it was because, the seniority made me get bumped from 3rd to 4th. But then from 4th to 5th, I was like, oh, I'm following my kiddos. And what I found, the reason I did that was I was at a school. I love how Oakland thinks that they're a big district, and that, like, our elementary school is 200 kids?
Yeah, nothing.
Elementary school that I started was 1,800 kids.
There you go. Yes.
And we were on 3 different tracks. And I just happened to be on the track because, again, last hired, the lower on the seniority, right? We would end a year in June. And on the other side of the weekend, because we had a all year-round school, I started with another group of kids. And so what was beautiful about taking those 3rd through 4th, and I didn't know it at the time that it was going to be a blessing, was that because we were on the other side of the weekend in a new school year, we got to start on day 1.
Yes.
Because they knew my routines. They knew my expectations. They knew, how to move, right? And to the point where it was funny, because I got married in that 4th grade year. And so, I come back from, it was during the Christmas break that I got married. And I came back still calling myself my maiden name because I just wasn't used to saying Miss Black, right? And they're like, you need to write your name over and over and over again until you can.
That's what the kids are saying.
Because, this was back in the day when people would write standards, right?
Oh, yes.
And I shudder to think of it now. But they were like, Miss Black, you're just going to have to keep writing your name over and over and over again. And then the year after those fifth graders went on, I ended up going down to second grade, first or second grade. And I had a sub day. And I had the sub plans, and the kids told me the next day, yeah, the sub tried to do something else, and we told them, we're gonna get right. Ms. Black expects us to do exactly
what she told you to do. That's right.
That was early on in the year. So at any rate, I just wanted to share that. Yeah. I so appreciate that you have spent way more time than typically.
Than our mouths, yes.
But I'm hoping that you will give me a few more minutes because there's a couple questions that can be as short as you'd like them to be.
Okay.
But what brings you joy?
My family.
And what is your superpower?
Ooh. The Geathers superpower, to be quite honest, is that we have this ability to get people to talk to us. Which,
that is so interesting. Again, we're going to close up with a little questionnaire, a very short question, 10 questions that are based on the questions that James has been asked at the end of Inside the Actor Studio, which I got the name as an inspiration.
Yes.
But before we go on, get to that closing piece. Number one, if there's an aspiring leader who is inspired by anything that you said, how can people get in touch with you?
They can email me.
Okay.
Sure. Just give them my email address. I got 3, but I really only have one, which is OUSD. So Carin.Geathers@OUSD.org, because I sometimes look at my Gmail, but not really. And then I got a Yahoo account, and I never look at that one. So, but yeah, that would be just great.
Perfect. So as we close, I always ask the same 10 questions.
Okay.
You have the right to say, I don't want to answer that.
Okay.
So far, everybody has gone into that one question that I think that they're not going to say, and they go with full chest. So I'm hoping you're going to humor me.
I can't even imagine what question that is. So now I'm interested. You got me. Let's go.
What's your favorite word?
Purpose.
What's your least favorite word?
Can't.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
What turns me on? Possibility.
What turns you off?
Oh God, meanness.
What is, here it goes, what's your favorite curse word?
Well, it has changed over the years, but I now think my favorite curse word probably is, God damn it, because I've been saying that a whole lot lately.
I love it. What sound or noise do you love?
I love to hear laughter.
Love it.
Full body, just full-throated laughter.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Probably the sound of a rodent.
Oh God!
Scurrying across. Oh gosh! Yes,
we had that conversation earlier this morning.
Yes, we talk about. That's probably where it came from.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I'd like to be a neonatal nurse. I like to hold babies.
What profession would you not like to do?
Probably who are the people that climb under houses and root out rodents? I have a rodent theme here. Yeah, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
I could do anything else, but I couldn't do that one. I wouldn't be good at that.
I love it. If an afterlife exists, what would you like to hear your maker say when you arrive?
Job well done.
Again, I love that we get to talk a lot at work, but this has been a serious treat to have you uninterrupted.
Yes, thank you.
Because you're always getting pulled in different directions.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Again, I'm so excited about the revisioning and continuing to partner with you towards, getting our kids and making sure that Burke Culture stays a Black thriving school. So
a historically Black elementary school, as
exactly.
Thank you so much, Monica. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. You got me talking and thinking about all kinds of stuff. I appreciate the ask. We've been talking about, giving folks feedback, giving students feedback. And what is on the other side of that is being able to, accept feedback and know what to do with it, right? So I do appreciate that. The opportunity to really, tell a story, vision, and think, and be inspired is all of that wrapped into one. And I do appreciate it. I really do.
Well, thank you so much. This interview has gone longer than a lot of my class.
I'm sorry, I can talk.
No, and the reason that I just kept it going was that, oftentimes people aren't really, it's like you anticipated the next question that I was going to ask when you were saying it. So I was like, I don't even have to be here. Like, she's just going to answer it anyway. So, so I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you really liked being here because, I was like, is she going to want to come?
I did. And I have to tell, and I think I said it to Miss Mitchell, to just be thought of, in that way.
Yeah.
And she's got to be your next one. And so it is, like I said, to be able to kind of accept what people are saying. And I do, I am a humble servant. I really do feel that way. Like I said, never the same day twice. And for that, I am able to get up the next day and look forward to it. So I do appreciate.
Absolutely. And as I close today, I am inspired by the conversation that we've had. You do not sit there and just accept and receive the circumstances that are happening to you. You've been very proactive. And we always hear that we want to have hope, right?
Always, yes.
But one thing that I've always been heard to say and has kind of been started to attach to me is that hope is not a strategy. So I love how your niece encouraged you to here, have a plan.
That's right.
Do the thing, do all the things, ask for all of the things.
That's right.
And so until next time, I'm Monica Black. Hope is not a strategy.
Hope is
See you next time on Inside the Teacher Studio. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Bye.